One solo developer won Best Design at GDC and BAFTA this year. Not a studio, one person. Tonda Ros spent 8 years building Blueprints, a game that combines roguelike drafting with puzzle adventure. Every designer he talked to told him randomness would break a puzzle game. He did it anyway, and he swept the design awards. Here's why it works and what it means for your project. Blueprints is a puzzle game where you explore a mansion that rearranges itself every day. You play as Simon P. Jones. You've inherited Mount Holly estate from your great-uncle. The catch is you need to find a hidden 46th room to claim the inheritance. The mansion sits on a grid of 45 rooms. When you open a door, you draft that room from 3 randomly chosen floor plans and place it on the grid. You have 50 steps per day. Every room you enter costs 1 step. When you run out of steps, the day ends and the house resets. But you keep everything you've learned. That last part, the permanent knowledge, matters more than anything else in this game, and we'll get to why. This game matters for indie developers because of how it was built. One person, Tonda Ros, developed it over 8 years in Unity. He came from a film background. He was making commercials in Los Angeles before teaching himself game development. He brought in an art director and a jazz duo for music, but the design and engineering was primarily his work, published by Raw Fury. It released in April 2025 and immediately became the highest rated game of the year on Metacritic with a 92 on PC. It won Best Design at the Game Developers' Choice Awards, Best Design at BAFTA, Outstanding Independent Game and Game Design at D.I.C.E Game of the Year at the Indie Game Awards. When the industry consensus lands on one game winning this many design awards, there's something worth studying in how it was built. Here's the core loop. You open a door, pick one of 3 room cards and place it on the grid. The doors and walls of the new room don't have to line up with existing rooms. If they don't match up, those doors become blocked. So every placement is a spatial puzzle on top of everything else. Each room has contents, keys, gems, coins, tools, or puzzles. Keys unlock doors in other rooms. Gems buy special room drafts. Coins buy food to restore your steps. Tools solve specific puzzles in specific rooms. You're always managing a resource chain inside a step budget, inside a spatial constraint. The grid is 9 rows by 5 columns. Rooms have tiers based on which row they're in. Higher tier rooms deeper in the mansion have more complex puzzles and better rewards. Only 2 rooms are fixed. The entrance hall where you start and the antechamber that leads to room 46 on the far side. Everything in between is drafted fresh every single day. The loop is straightforward. Draft, explore, collect, manage your steps and decide whether to push your luck or start a new day with a better layout. Now here's the first big design decision, and it's the one that won those awards. Traditional puzzle games have a fatal flaw. If a player gets stuck on a puzzle, they're done. They either look up the answer and spoil the experience, or they quit. It's a binary check, you solve it or you're locked out. This is the number one reason puzzle games have high drop-off rates. Blueprints fixes this by randomizing the path, not the puzzles. The puzzles themselves are deterministic. A given puzzle always has the same solution, but which rooms appear and where they appear on the grid changes every run. If you can't solve a room's puzzle today, you take a different door. If you keep hitting dead ends, you start a new day and get a completely different mansion layout. The dead ends aren't even punishments. Many dead end rooms contain valuable items or rewards. There are multiple solutions for most challenges. Some items provide alternate routes to the same goal. Tonda Ros described this directly. In a traditional puzzle game, if you have trouble with a particular puzzle, you're stuck until you can solve it. It's a binary check. In Blueprints, you always have the option to move on and keep exploring. Nothing blocks your progress. Think about what this means for the player experience. In a traditional puzzle game, the emotional arc is curiosity, engagement, and then potentially frustration and a guide lookup. In Blueprints, the emotional arc is curiosity, discovery, and then either a satisfying solve or a pivot to something else equally interesting. The randomness isn't a design compromise. It's the core UX innovation. And here's the key distinction that makes it work. The randomness lives in the layout, not in the puzzles. The puzzles are fair and deterministic. The path to them is what changes. Players get novelty and replayability without sacrificing puzzle integrity. That's a design pattern worth stealing. The second design decision is about progression, and it's the one that makes the game stick with you for weeks. Blueprints has 2 types of progression, temporary and permanent. Keys, gems, coins, tools, all gone when the day ends. You start each run with a fresh inventory, but your knowledge, that's permanent across every run. You remember which rooms contain which puzzles. You learn that certain room combinations create shortcuts through the grid. You discover hidden rules governing the house, like how the tier system works, or which rooms tend to spawn near each other. The real progression system isn't an experience bar or a skill tree. It's in your brain. Rose spent years building this layer. The game was fully playable by 2021. He spent the next 4 years doing something he calls widening the well, adding layers of mystery, lore, and hidden mechanics for players to discover across dozens of runs. Some puzzles require clues from 5 different rooms scattered across the mansion. Some secrets only appear after you've solved other puzzles that taught you to notice patterns you'd been walking past the whole time. The mansion has an entire hidden narrative about a missing children's book author named Marion Marigold, and the clues are buried in the furthest rooms of the house. You only find them after you've learnt enough about the mansion's rules to reach those rooms reliably. This creates a meta progression that no skill tree can match. When the player is the save file, the engagement runs deeper than any item or upgrade could produce. Outer Wilds does this brilliantly. Return of the Obra Dinn does this. Blueprints takes the concept further by wrapping it in a roguelike loop, giving you the one more run hook of a deck builder combined with the intellectual satisfaction of cracking a mystery. You're not grinding for stats, you're learning. Every run makes you smarter about the house, and that knowledge compounds. The third design decision is about audience, and it's the most practical one for indie devs to study. Ros explicitly designed blueprints for 2 groups that usually don't overlap: strategy and board game players on one side, puzzle and mystery players on the other. He recognized that these demographics don't necessarily have a traditional overlap, as he put it. The drafting mechanic hooks the strategy crowd. If you've played Magic the Gathering or any deck builder, you understand the appeal of choosing from a random pool and optimizing your build. Resource management, build optimization, risk versus reward on every room placement, that's pure strategy game DNA. The puzzles and hidden lore hook the mystery crowd. Environmental storytelling, logic challenges, secrets buried 3 layers deep, that's classic adventure game territory. The brilliance is that neither group is locked out by weakness in the other domain. Strategy players can draft their way past puzzles they can't solve by building efficient paths through the mansion. They treat the layout like a board game and optimize their routes. Puzzle players can solve their way past bad layouts by knowing exactly which rooms they need and how to reach them. They treat the mansion like a mystery and learn its patterns. The single shared tension point that unites both groups is the step budget. Every player, whether they're here for the strategy or the puzzles, cares about making each step count. That's the thread that holds both audiences together. Ros tested this for years. He watched hundreds of hours of playtest footage starting in 2020, tweaking the balance so that both types of players could find a satisfying path. When you're mixing genres, this is the pattern to steal. Don't just bolt mechanics from one genre onto another. Find the one tension point that both audiences care about and build your core loop around that center. So what can you take from this for your own project? 3 principles. First, if your game has a stuck state problem, and most puzzle and adventure games do, randomize the path, not the content. Make the layout variable, keep the puzzles fixed. Players get novelty and replayability without sacrificing fairness. This works beyond puzzle games too. Any game where players can hit a wall, a boss they can't beat, a resource they can't find, a locked gate with no key. Consider whether randomizing the route to that obstacle could create alternative paths forward. You don't need to make the obstacle itself easier. Just give players another way to progress while they build the skills or knowledge to come back and overcome it. Second, invest in knowledge-based progression. It's harder to design than a skill tree, but the engagement is deeper and more durable. When players feel like they're the ones leveling up, not their character, they stick around for weeks instead of hours. The tricky part is making sure the knowledge is discoverable. Rish solved this by placing clues in multiple locations and allowing puzzles to be solved with partial information. If you hide critical knowledge behind a single obscure interaction, you've just recreated the stuck state problem in a different form. The knowledge needs to be layered. Basic rules that players pick up naturally, intermediate patterns that reward attention, and deep secrets that require connecting dots across multiple play sessions. Third, when mixing genres, don't mash mechanics together and hope they work. Find the shared tension point. Build from that center outward. Blueprints' shared tension point is the step budget. What's yours? If you're mixing survival and crafting, it might be inventory space. If you're mixing rhythm and combat, it might be timing windows. Find the one constraint that both player types care about and design your core loop around it. Ros took 8 years because these integrations don't come easy, but the result won every design award that matters this year. Now here's where AI tools change the math on a project like this. You can prototype a blueprint-style drafting system in an afternoon using something like Claude Code or Cursor, define a room data model with resource costs, puzzle triggers, and grid placement rules. Then use AI to run draft probability simulations across thousands of generated layouts. Verify that no random configuration is unsolvable, that every puzzle is reachable through at least one path. Test your step economy by simulating thousands of playthroughs with different draft sequences and checking whether the average run is completable within the step budget. The multiple solutions design pattern is especially AI friendly. Define your solution space and have AI verify that every puzzle is reachable through at least two independent paths across random layouts. That's the kind of testing that took Rose 4 years to do by watching playtest footage. AI compresses that into hours of simulation time. A solo dev with these tools could prototype the core loop of a drafting puzzle game in days, not years. The hard part isn't the code, it's the design decisions, knowing which things to randomize and which to keep fixed, and building the knowledge progression that makes players want to come back. And that's exactly what we're working on inside AI Craft, building these kinds of systems with AI handling the tedious simulation and balance testing so you can focus on the design work that actually matters. We're building puzzle and drafting systems like this inside AI Craft, with AI running solvability checks across thousands of random configurations. Join the community and apply these design principles to your own project. Please feel free to subscribe and check out the links in the description below.